Good evening. Global pop superstar Katy Perry is tonight at the centre of a police investigation over bombshell claims of sexual abuse inside a Melbourne nightclub.
Katy Perry spent 15 years building something that looked unbreakable: record-setting tours. A judge's chair on the biggest talent show in America, a brand built on glitter, whipped cream, and a smile that never seemed to crack under pressure. Then, over the course of about 72 hours in April 2026, a single social media post cracked it wide open. What followed was not just internet outrage. It was a real police investigation, open on another continent, into events from 16 years ago. Here is how it happened, what's actually been confirmed, and where this story realistically goes from here. On the night of Sunday, April 12, 2026, the entertainment outlet Complex shared a light-hearted post about Katy Perry's reaction to Justin Bieber's Coachella set. Bieber had just played his first ever Coachella performance, weaving in old footage of himself as a teenager. Perry, who was at the festival with her boyfriend, former Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, had poked fun at the moment online, joking that she was grateful Bieber had YouTube Premium, so she wouldn't have to sit through ads on old clips of himself. It was a throwaway celebrity moment. Then Ruby Rose replied. Rose, the Australian actress best known for Orange is the New Black and Batwoman, wrote a comment that had nothing to do with Justin Bieber. She said Katy Perry had assaulted her at a nightclub called Spice Market in Melbourne, and that she didn't care what Perry thought of anyone. The comment was blunt, angry, and completely unrelated to the post it was attached to, which is exactly why it caught fire. Within hours, it had been screenshotted across every entertainment account on the platform. Rose didn't stop there. In a series of follow-up posts, later deleted, she laid out a detailed account. She said she'd been lying on her best friend's lap that night, trying to avoid Perry, when Perry approached her, pulled her underwear aside, and pressed herself against Rose's face. Rose said she vomited on Perry in response. She said she was in her early 20s at the time and is now 40, and that it had taken her nearly 2 decades to say any of this publicly. She framed the delay as a symptom of what trauma does to a person's ability to speak. She also made a dare. She told Perry to sue her, insisting Perry never would, because, in Rose's telling, there were photos, witnesses, and it happened in public. 2 days later, Rose posted an update. She said she had gone to police and filed a formal report, and that she had been asked, as a standard part of the process, not to discuss the case or the individuals involved publicly anymore. She described the instruction as almost a relief, something that let her step back and start processing what she said had happened. On April 15th, the Melbourne Sexual Offences and Child Abuse Investigation Team, SOSIT, confirmed they were looking into a historical sexual assault allegation tied to an incident in Melbourne's Central Business District in 2010. The statement was careful and clinical. It didn't name Perry. It didn't name Rose. It didn't need to. A Victoria police sergeant, speaking to NBC News, said she couldn't confirm specific names because of privacy protocol, but she confirmed the unit involved and confirmed the time frame. 2010, a licensed venue, Melbourne CBD. SOSIT isn't a generic desk that happens to be handling this. It's a specialized unit, dozens of locations across Victoria, hundreds of trained officers, detectives who go through weeks of dedicated training specifically in sexual offense investigation. They work out of multidisciplinary centers alongside forensic specialists and trauma counselors, and they record interviews using a formal audiovisual evidence process. This is the unit Victoria built specifically to handle cases like this one, not a place where old complaints quietly go to die. And Victoria has no statute of limitations on sexual offenses. A report from 2010 can legally be pursued in 2026 or 2040 or later. Time alone doesn't kill this kind of case. Evidence does, or the lack of it. Within roughly 48 hours of Rose's initial post, a representative for Perry issued a statement. It was short and it was pointed. The statement described the allegations as categorically false and as dangerous, reckless lies. It went further, adding that Rose had a well-documented pattern of making serious public allegations against various people, allegations, the statement noted, that had repeatedly been denied by those named. Read casually, that sounds like a standard celebrity denial. Read closely, it's doing something more deliberate. Every phrase is built to do a specific job. Categorically false forecloses any partial truth defense. Reckless frames the accuser's state of mind, not just the accusation's accuracy. And a line about a well-documented history plants a credibility argument before any court ever gets involved. This isn't just a publicist trying to make a bad news cycle go away. It reads like language written with litigation in mind. That matters more in Australia than it would almost anywhere else, because Australian defamation law works differently than American law. In the United States, a public figure suing over defamation has to prove the person who made the statement acted with actual malice, a genuinely difficult bar to clear, and one that tends to protect accusers. In Australia, the burden flips. The person being sued for defamation has to prove their statement was true, or they lose. That difference is exactly why Australian courts have become preferred venue for public figures pushing back on public accusations. Nicole Kidman, Jeffrey Rush, and Rebel Wilson have all used Australian defamation law to their advantage in the past. Perry's statement reads like it was written by someone keeping that option open. One day after the statement, Perry posted something on her own Instagram story. No caption, no explanation. It was a cover art for her 2013 song, By the Grace of God, with the words, "I love you" written over it. Fans immediately went digging to the lyrics, and one line got passed around constantly, a reference to truth eventually coming out. Nobody could agree on what she meant by it. A message to her fans, a spiritual statement, something aimed at Rose. It remains the only thing Perry has said in her own voice throughout the entire story. Everything else has come from a representative. Context matters here, because the scandal didn't land on a stable public image. It landed on a year that was already going badly for Perry. Her 2024 album underperformed critically and commercially, and her collaboration with producer Dr. Luke on that project reignited old backlash tied to his history with singer Kesha. In April 2025, she flew aboard Jeff Bezos' Blue Origin rocket and was mocked online for weeks over the optics of it. That July, she split from longtime partner Orlando Bloom after nearly a decade together, and months later began dating Trudeau. Her world tour has been the one clear success of the period, pulling in over $100 million. But her public standing was already fragile before Rose posted a single word. The alleged incident is tied to Spice Market, a nightclub that operated in Melbourne from 2009 until it closed permanently at the start of 2026, just months before Rose's allegations went public. The club sat in the basement of a building next to Grand Hyatt on Collins Street, built out with Moroccan courtyard theme, a fountain, and a roughly 600-person capacity. It had a VIP section known as the Genie Bottle, where celebrities were typically kept. In August 2010, Perry was in Australia promoting California Girls ahead of the release of Teenage Dream. Earlier that same night, she famously crashed a year 12 high school formal at the Grand Hyatt. Footage of her dancing there circulated widely and is still online. Afterward, the group reportedly moved next door to Spice Market. According to a former manager of the club, Perry and Rose arrived together, along with Perry's hair and makeup artist and a male friend of Rose's. The manager described the night as chaotic from a security standpoint. A packed club, Perry repeatedly leaving the VIP area to dance on the main floor, both women visibly drinking. He said staff eventually became concerned about people photographing the two of them in an intoxicated state, so they arranged a car and walked both women out through a fire exit, reportedly sending them on to another well-known Melbourne venue, the Peel Hotel. He also said, notably, that he wasn't personally aware of any misconduct and wasn't aware of anyone being sick that night, a carefully worded statement that doesn't deny anything happened so much as it limits what he's personally confirming. The timing of the club's closure complicates the investigation. Any security footage from 2010 would have been gone within 30 days under standard nightclub retention practices at the time, meaning it was already unrecoverable more than a decade before this case became public. With the venue shut down and its ownership dispersed, the case is now built almost entirely on memory, not documentation. Here's the part of the story that makes this genuinely hard to untangle. In 2011, Rose wrote a column for News.com describing that same night at Spice Market, but she described it as a funny cautionary tale about falling off the wagon after 30 days sober, not as an assault. In that version, she has one drink, doesn't stop at one, and ends up vomiting on Perry's foot, framing the whole night around losing her dignity to alcohol. There's no mention of misconduct anywhere in it. That column resurfaced almost immediately once her 2026 allegations went viral, and it split public reaction. Some read it as proof the new account was fabricated. Others read it as exactly the kind of reframing survivors sometimes use to make an experience bearable to talk about at all. Rose addressed the contradiction herself, saying she deliberately turned it into a funny drunk story at the time because she didn't know another way to process it, and that she'd stayed quiet afterward in part because Perry had helped her secure a U.S. visa. That explanation lines up with a well-documented pattern in research on disclosure. People who are assaulted by someone with power over their career or future often delay coming forward for years, sometimes decades. Studies on survivors, including a widely cited 2019 study on delayed disclosure, have found average gaps of well over a decade between an incident and a survivor speaking publicly, and many people never disclose within the first 5 years at all. Still, from a legal standpoint, the column is a real problem for Rose's case. A contemporaneous written account that contradicts the current version of events is exactly the kind of material a defense team builds around. It doesn't disprove the allegation, but it gives Perry's lawyers something concrete to use against Rose's credibility if this ever reaches a courtroom. That credibility fight is likely to extend beyond this one story. Rose has been involved in public disputes before, most notably her departure from Batwoman in 2020, after which she accused Warner Brothers of fostering a hostile work environment. Warner Brothers disputed her account and said her exit followed multiple internal complaints against her. Her former co-star Doug Ray Scott publicly called her version of events untrue. That dispute never reached a formal legal resolution. There's also a smaller, earlier moment worth noting. In 2017, Rose publicly mocked Perry's single swish swish before walking the comment back 2 days later, saying being unkind wasn't who she wanted to be. None of that proves or disproves what she's alleging now, but it's exactly the kind of history Perry's representative was almost certainly gesturing toward with the phrase well-documented history. Once Rose's allegation went public, people started resurfacing older stories involving Perry, and there are more of them than casual fans probably remember. In a 2014 appearance on Conan O'Brien's show, actress Anna Kendrick described an encounter with Perry at that year's Grammy Awards, saying Perry touched her chest in a way she called weird and aggressive. At the time, the story was told as a joke and got big laughs from the studio audience, including from Kendrick herself. Watch back now, with a different cultural lens on consent, it plays very differently than it did in 2014. Kendrick has not issued any new statement since the clip resurfaced. Then there's Josh Kloss, the model who played Perry's love interest in her 2010 Teenage Dream music video. In 2019, Kloss posted a lengthy, detailed account on Instagram alleging that Perry pulled down his sweatpants and underwear in front of a crowd at a friend's birthday party, exposing him, and that he felt humiliated by it. He also said he was paid only $650 for his work on one of the biggest music videos of Perry's career. Two of Perry's friends publicly pushed back, calling Kloss's account false and suggesting he had an unhealthy fixation on Perry. Perry herself never directly addressed the allegation. She posted a general message about kindness around the same time, and, in a later interview, made only a passing comment about how quickly headlines spread without real accountability. There's also Benjamin Glaze, a 2018 American Idol contestant who told the judges, including Perry, that he'd never been kissed and wanted to save that for a real relationship. Perry called him up to what he expected would be a kiss on the cheek and turned her head at the last moment, resulting in a kiss on the lips that visibly startled him. It's worth being precise here. Glaze later clarified, including to the New York Times, that he didn't consider the moment harassment and wasn't upset about the kiss itself. His discomfort was more about it happening in a public, unplanned way rather than the way he'd imagined his first kiss. Perry never directly addressed the moment publicly. None of these stories, on their own, prove anything about what happened at Spice Market in 2010. But together they form a pattern that people are now looking at differently than they did at the time. Repeated stories involving a public setting, a power gap between Perry and the other person, and physical boundary crossing that got framed at the time as playful or funny. And in every case, Perry's own responses followed the same shape. Silence from her personally, a statement from a representative, or nothing at all. This case doesn't resolve on a single news cycle. It depends on choices a small number of people haven't made yet. The first is Rose herself. She's claimed she has photographs from that night, but hasn't released them. If she does, and they're authentic and clearly dated, that changes the shape of the case significantly. Corroborating evidence is exactly what's missing from a 16-year-old, no footage allegation. She also holds a second card. The people who were reportedly there, including her best friend and a male friend, both of whom could be interviewed by SASA detectives as part of the investigation. The second is Perry. Her team has the option of filing a defamation suit in Australia, where, as noted, the burden would fall on Rose to prove her claim is true. That's a genuinely difficult bar for a 16-year-old, largely undocumented incident. But a lawsuit would also open the door to discovery, potentially forcing Perry's own team a hand over records and testimony neither side may want made public. That risk may be exactly why no suit had been filed as of this writing, and it's worth noting a widely circulated claim about a specific defamation suit already being filed appears to be unverified and hasn't been confirmed by any credible outlet. The third is the Office of Public Prosecutions, the body that actually decides whether SASA's investigation turns into formal charges, not the police themselves. If they believe there's a realistic chance of conviction, they proceed. If not, the case ends quietly with or without public explanation. Because there's no statute of limitations working against them, prosecutors are under no clock. They can take as long as they need. The fourth group is the witnesses, the hair and makeup artist, Rose's male friend, the driver, the club's former security staff, and anyone who worked at the Peel Hotel that night. Any of them could be contacted by detectives, and their memories of one chaotic night in 2010 may end up matching more than anything said publicly since. There's also a longer-term possibility hanging over all of this: extradition. Australia and the United States have a treaty covering sexual offenses, meaning that if Australian prosecutors ever filed formal charges, they could seek to have Perry returned to Australia to face them. That kind of process, if it were ever triggered, would likely take years rather than months. Extradition cases involving far more serious and clear-cut circumstances have dragged on that long before. One more detail makes this case unusually difficult to resolve either way. The alleged incident happened in August 2010, and Instagram didn't launch until that October. The night in question falls into a narrow gap between the old era of nightlife, where nothing was documented in real time, and the current era, where almost everything is. There's no live stream, no geotag photo dump, no viral video from that specific night, just memory, one old magazine column, and photographs that may or may not ever surface. As of now, nothing has been resolved. There's an open police investigation, a public denial, an old column that complicates both sides of the story, and a growing list of older allegations that have been pulled back into the light. No charges have been filed. No lawsuit has been confirmed.